Welcome back to the Crowd Chatter Podcast, everyone. That's Mitch. I'm Jacob. Just us two today. Today we are doing NCAA football, what was supposed to be mid-season reviews, but around week 6 we were just so freaking busy that we did not have time. So we're just going to review the season that we've seen thus far with 3 weeks remaining before the end of the season. So
now, I did originally say in a different video that we would just skip it, but we're going to do it.
We actually have an extra day this week, so we're making up for it. We're actually getting it back. So as you can follow along on that bottom bar down there, but as you can see that big bottom bar down there, it says Disappointments. And what better way to start a video than by talking about some of the most disappointing things that have happened this year. Disappointing teams, people not living up to the hype. Let's get started with, I think, one of the biggest ones, the Clemson Tigers. Started the season preseason number 3. Played a hard-fought game against...
Yes, number 3.
Played a hard-fought game against Georgia. I think they played South Carolina State the next week, and we're like, all right. And then it was 14-8 against Georgia Tech. And then everybody was like, wait a second. Clemson, what are you guys good? And then they're like, DJ will find he'll find his rhythm, which we'll talk about DJ later. He'll find his rhythm, this Clemson team will find its offense. No, they did not. Lose to NC State, put up some close games, lose to... Who was the other team? Pitt. Lost to Pitt. So, I mean, they're 6-3, so it's not a, terrible year, but according to Clemson standards, it's been forever since I've seen Clemson just not in the top 25, and obviously preseason ranking number 3 actually put up a fight against Georgia, and I think there is that mental aspect to it, checking in and checking out of games. Clemson played Georgia closer than anybody has this year, and I don't think it's because Clemson is good. I think it's because Clemson thought they were good. And then as soon as they've kind of lost that mojo, it was kind of downhill from there. But obviously that is, in my opinion, probably the biggest disappointment of the year.
Yeah, Clemson being at 6-3 after being obviously pretty much expected to be in the playoff really was a giant disappointment for pretty much everyone in Clemson Nation. Now, Clemson actually technically still has a chance at winning their side of the division of the ACC. It would take a pretty sizable, pretty big miracle for it to happen, considering they have a loss to NC State. But if there is I think there's 2 scenarios in which they can actually
win. They'd have to beat Wake Forest, and then Wake Forest would have to lose another game because North Carolina did not count as a conference game. So, because Clemson has 2 ACC losses with the Pitt loss and the NC State loss, so they would hold the head-to-head if Wake Forest had 2 losses.
NC State and Wake Forest would have to lose 2 more games.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because NC State they don't
have to beat Wake Forest.
They don't have the tiebreaker. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, it would be a pretty big miracle if it actually did happen. But technically, Clemson is still in it for the ACC Atlantic. But yeah, this team has not been anywhere near expectations. I mean, I like the running back Will Shipley can play. They had what was supposedly a loaded receiving core. DJ Uyunglele, however you pronounce his last name. Yeah. But he was expected to be obviously a Heisman candidate at the beginning of the year, and he hasn't been anywhere close to that. He got benched against Pitt. So, I mean, that did not look good. And he's been starting since, but he got benched in that Pitt game. That's not a good look. But yeah, Clemson really has been struggling all year long. I mean, winning pretty much all their games, actually, that they won outside of those games against South Carolina State and Florida. Well, Florida State pretty much was a one-possession game until the end when they ran in the because it was Florida State was doing all the laterals and then just ran that in. So technically, that's really a one-possession game too. But Clemson has pretty much won all of their games by one possession. So even when they've won, they have not looked good. But I mean, yeah, I think I'll stop talking now. But yeah, Clemson definitely the biggest disappointment.
And then another one, Indiana. I mean, I knew they had a tough schedule, but jeez, I didn't. I picked them I picked the under 9.5 wins for them because I did not think, or 8.5. I did not think they'd get to 9 wins. They are definitely not getting anywhere close to 9 wins. What are they? 2-7 now?
Yep, they won't make a bowl game.
Yikes! They finally have a chance to win though. They're at home against Rutgers, so they're actually favored by 7 this weekend. But yeah, Indiana has not been good. I really not gonna lie to you. I have not paid much attention to Indiana. I didn't even watch the Michigan-Indiana game because I was just doing other things. So I haven't really paid much attention to Indiana. I just know they were supposed to be at least halfway decent, and they have stunk.
Yeah, Indiana has obviously been a major disappointment as well. Now, I was concerned for the Hoosiers really because of Michael Penix because he was a really great quarterback, but of course he tore his ACL the previous year. So I'm thinking, okay, is he gonna look? Because we saw with Miami, Florida, De'Ara King, which really they haven't been great this year either. They're picking it up, but De'Ara King, we saw it happen with him. He tore his ACL towards the end of the year, and he came back and never looked the same. And it's been the same thing with Michael Penix. He came back this year from a torn ACL, and he never looked the same for Indiana. He didn't look like the same player that gave Indiana a really impressive year last year. And it never came together for Indiana. Also, their defense has been a major problem this season. I think they're like one of the worst defenses in the country, and I think they might be the worst in the the worst in the Big Ten is Michigan State, oddly enough. But Indiana, yeah, they've been pathetic this year. It's been basically an entire 180 from the previous year. They went from biggest surprise to biggest disappointment. Just not good for the Hoosiers.
For sure. And then our next one is the Heisman frontrunners from the preseason. The two big ones, the two big names, Spencer Rattler and DJ Uiagalelei. Both have been benched at one point this year. Spencer Rattler has yet to return after being benched in that Texas game, after looking awful throughout most of the beginning of the season. Like 16-13 at home against, or they might have been on the road. I think they were at home. No, they were at home. Again, 16-13 at home against West Virginia. Awful. The Spencer Rattler just looked terrible, and he got benched for Caleb Williams. And the second he got benched, Caleb Williams came in and overcame like a 25-point deficit to Texas and beat the crap out of him, starting the collapse of Texas as we know it. We'll get to them
later.
We'll get to them. Don't worry. And then DJ, got benched in the Pitt game. I think he's still playing because I don't think their backup is much better, but obviously he has not been producing very well. I know in that Pitt game he had like 2 interceptions or something, and then you're getting pulled. So they have not looked good. Now you've got the Matt Corral, Kenneth Walkers of the world. Oh, and CJ Stroud and Chase Bryce, obviously. Or not Chase Bryce. Not the App State quarterback. Bryce Young. I don't know why I always get Chase Bryce and Bryce Young mixed up.
But yeah, you look at DJ and DJ Uiagalelei, whatever. Spencer Rattler. Both of these guys were expected to be so great coming into the year. Now, I was never the biggest Spencer Rattler fan. I think he's a okay quarterback. I don't think he was anywhere near a Heisman candidate, and I didn't really know much about DJ. I only saw him play one game, and I'm like, who knows? But DJ has really obviously been a big disappointment. But Spencer Rattler, he was bad for Oklahoma, and they ended up winning still. But in that Texas game, really was basically losing the game from until they put in Caleb Williams, true freshman. And he started going bananas and basically won that game for him. And Oklahoma has looked slightly better with Caleb Williams on the team. Well, actually, no, they've looked a lot better, minus that Kansas game. Don't know where that came from. But Spencer Rattler, I expect him to transfer. I think it's basically inevitable that he ends up transferring and going somewhere else.
They say
change
he's
of scenery for him.
They say he's coming to ASU. They say he's coming to ASU. The party school.
Rattler.
The party school.
That'd be interesting. But Spencer Rattler, I think he gets a lot of hate. I think he's okay. I don't think he's great, but I think he's better than what people say he is. He's not good, but he's not like this terrible, awful quarterback that everyone says he is. He has talent. It's just not Heisman talent.
Caleb Williams is definitely better though, by a long shot.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about a team that cannot put 2 straight weeks together and is currently playing as we speak, proving my point of not being able to put 2 weeks straight together. North Carolina, opens the season with a loss against Virginia Tech, then wins a game. I think maybe wins 2 games, I don't remember. And then they lose, get blown out by Georgia Tech. It was awful, embarrassing. And then I think they play Duke or something. They play someone next and beat them. And then they play at home against Florida State. And they just lose by 10. And then they kind of bounce back and forth, win a game, then lose to Notre Dame. Then the next week, or they have a bye, then they play Wake Forest. And they beat Wake Forest. And now they're getting their butts smacked by Pitt. So, this team is confusing, and this was the team that was thought to be able to compete for the ACC, if not a New Year's Six Bowl, potentially. But right now, there's a lot of confusion for me in Chapel Hill. I feel like they're better when they're not in. They're like the 49ers. They're better when they're not playing at home.
Yeah, North Carolina this year has been very, very confusing, very much to my chagrin, considering they're on my fantasy team. And,
yeah. Hey,
but they have enough help with Georgia and company that doesn't really matter.
At least you don't have Toledo.
Yeah,
I do have Cincinnati though. I do have Cincinnati though, so that's helpful.
But Sam Howell this year, he hasn't necessarily been. Many people will say, "Oh, Sam Howell's been the disappointment." I think it's more of just North Carolina in general has been the disappointment.
Sam Howell's looked great.
Sam Howell's doing just fine. He actually is ranked 23rd in the country for yards passing.
And his running game, oh my gosh, He was barreling through Wake Forest defenders. He was putting the shoulder down and bodying them to the ground.
Well, Wake Forest can't. They don't have defense, so
that's also true. But it's funny to see a quarterback just barrel somebody over. Oh, he's gonna run actually. Just as we were talking about him running. Oh, and he completely gets stumped. Okay, you forget what I said about that.
No, well, looks like, okay. I guess you're behind because I'm watching. Never mind. I'll just because I'm watching I'm watching NFL. I'm watching Thursday Night Football, and I'm just trying to keep track of the score of North Carolina Pitt. Anyways,
they just failed a 2-point conversion.
No, yeah, okay. So 23-13 in that game, in case you guys are wondering. It's 6-3 Miami in Thursday Night Football for some reason. But anyways, North Carolina, their entire team is just so inconsistent. They have, like you said, they had weeks where they looked great and they would win games against the Virginias and Wake Forest of the world, and then they drop games of Florida State and Virginia Tech, or Florida State and Georgia Tech. It doesn't make any sense. So, North Carolina, Sam Howell is being Sam Howell. Sam Howell's been great for North Carolina. The problem's in the defense. Their defense is giving point totals. You look at the point totals they've given up this year: minus 17, 17, 39, 20. Or I'm sorry, not 22. 39, 45, 7 against Duke. 35, 42, 34, 55, 23. You hear all those. You see how high those point totals are.
And then you look at the first game of the season, and you see they scored 7 points or 10 points or whatever.
Yeah, they scored 10 points. They gave up 17 to Virginia Tech. I mean, the defense has been the problem for UNC. The offense has been all right, but that defense is being a major league letdown for the Tar Heels.
Speaking of major letdowns, we can confirm, and we make this joke every week in our group chat, we can confirm, Texas is not back, folks. Texas is not back, folks. We started out the season going to Arkansas and getting the butt whooped. Like, whooped. And then Arkansas became a good team. We're like, okay, that's not that bad. And then has a huge... And then they got their identity. Got out to a huge lead against Oklahoma and collapsed in the second half. Got out to a good lead against Oklahoma State. Collapsed in the second half. Got out to a lead against Baylor. Collapsed in the second half. And then Iowa State just completely owned the entire football game against them. So they are now sitting here at 4-5. 4-5. They might not make a bowl game. Now, granted, one of those last remaining games is Kansas. So they only have to beat either Kansas State at home or on the road against West Virginia. And those are two very losable games. Though it would be hysterical if Kansas beat them. That would be funny. But Texas has been another huge disappointment.
Yeah, there's been, in my opinion, there's been way more disappointments than there actually has been surprises. I mean, there's been a lot of teams that are expected to be solid and be great teams, and then they just completely disappeared off the face of the earth. And I mean, Texas, obviously, they have what would be their own Heisman candidate, Bijan Robinson. Guy is having an unbelievable season.
Unfortunately, his team sucks.
Yeah, in that running back for Texas, but then the rest of his team hasn't really done anything for him. I mean, the Big 12, the identity of the Big 12 is offense, and that's exactly what Texas has. I mean, they have the offense. They have a great offense. Bijan Robinson, he can obviously thrash any defense he plays. Quarterback play is decent, and of course they have some nice receivers. One of them being one I know, Xavier Worthy, former Michigan commit. Yeah, he's a speed demon. He can catch really well. Great true freshman for Texas. But the problem has been the defense again. I mean, it's the same thing as North Carolina. Texas defense has been just pitiful. Outside of a shutout against Rice, once again, 18, 40, 35, 27, 55, 32, 31, 30, a lot of more high scoring, giving up a ton of points. And
traditional Big 12 football. Traditional Big 12 football.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Big 12 is much better than the ACC.
Yeah. But, for Texas, it's just, again, this team gets so much talent. And they have a lot of great recruits on the defensive end. And then this stuff happens? Like, how is that possible? It doesn't make sense to me how you can get, unless you have Brady Hoke as your head coach at Michigan, but that wasn't even the case here. You have Steve Sarkisian, who's a former offensive coordinator for Alabama, and it had these past 4 games for Oklahoma, or not for Oklahoma, for Texas have been just an absolute disaster. You get big leads in every single one of the games. You have the team on the ropes, and then you blow the entire thing. You become the Atlanta Falcons of college football. You can't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So for Texas, it's just, man, you gotta stick with it. You can't blow it like that.
Just gotta hold on to a lead. Anyway, let's talk about another team, Washington. We can quickly breeze through this one, but Washington lost to Montana in week 1. Proceeded to get blown out by Michigan. Almost lost to Arizona, who at the time was still winless. and then decided to try to punt it on 4th and 10, backed up in their own end zone with a minute and a half left, and got the absolute biggest karma of all time of accidentally snapping it out of the back of the end zone. That's what you get for trying to punt it backed up in your own territory with a minute 30 left. That's what you get. That's just cold karma.
That was so bad.
It was so stupid. At that point, just go for it. You're playing Oregon. You gotta do whatever. You gotta do what you gotta do. But Washington's just not looked good. That's as simple as I can put it. Washington's just not looked good. I can't remember a moment in the season where I was like, wow, this Washington team might actually be something. Nope.
Well, Washington has been the reverse effect of Texas and Oklahoma. Or why do I keep saying Oklahoma? Texas and
North Carolina.
Texas and North Carolina. Washington's been reverse of those two teams, and their defense has been okay. Their defense was what was their specialty, and what's been the problem has been the offense. The offense hasn't really been able to put up points. I mean, against Montana, they only got 7 points. Against Montana. 7 points against a Montana team. Guys, you can't score more than 7 points against Montana. Come on now. But Washington's offense just has been completely lackluster, and that has been just really the main source of their problems. Because I look at Washington's scores; they've only cracked 30 points twice this year. Against Arkansas State and then Cal in an overtime game. Those are the only 2 times this year they've cracked 30 points. That's not good.
No, it is not. No, it is not.
That is not good. So, and Washington, their defense, like I said, defense is fine, but that offense has to improve. And it has been very much a problem this year for Washington, and has been the source of their issues this year.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on. We got 2 more absolute flops. We got USC. I mean, they got blown out at home by Stanford, got blown out at home by Oregon State, got blown out at home by some other team. They've just not looked good. I think they'll probably make a bowl game, maybe with how not great the rest of their schedule is, but I don't know. I don't even want to talk about it. We're just gonna say they're bad.
USC, I saw this coming. I saw they got ranked 15th. I'm like, you're crazy. This team is decent. They're okay. This team is not 15th. They're gonna get upset early, and then everyone's gonna say they're a disappointment. That's exactly what happened. Stanford walked into the Coliseum and wiped them off the face of the earth. USC then blows out Washington, then gets blown out by Oregon State at the Coliseum. Then blows out Colorado, then gets blown out again at the Coliseum. Just every time, it's North Carolina all over again. They can't win at home. It's like the Niners. What is it with California teams not being able to win in their home stadiums? Why?
I don't know, but I like the fact that we get to play in half of those California stadiums as an ASU fan and win.
Yeah, but and they also they almost lost to Arizona. They almost lost to Arizona. They beat the Wildcats by 7. They won 41-34.
That's how we gauge how good or bad Pac-12 teams are, by how close they were to Arizona.
Yeah, how good did they play against Arizona? But another problem for USC has been just the play of Kelvin Slavis. He's been not good this year. I mean, he's had some injury issues too, but he has not been good for USC. Drake London's been really good for USC, wide receiver. He's been great, but quarterback play been a problem, and overall, the Trojans have been not good this season. But I think things will turn around as finally they have done what they should have many years ago and got rid of Clay Helton. So we'll see who becomes the new head coach, but I think USC finally did what they needed to, and we'll see where they go from here.
All right, and for time's sake, since we are running very long, I'm just going to quick mention just Florida. 40 to 40-13 against South Carolina. And that's enough said. Anyway, let's move on to a positive note. Let's move on to the surprises.
Florida.
Yeah, let's move on to the surprises. I mean, we'll start with the biggest one, Michigan State. As much as we don't like to admit it, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look what my over/under pick was for them, but I don't think I ever thought they were going to be like terrible. But I did not foresee, 9-0 or 9-0 or 8-0. Sorry, they were 9-0, right?
They were 8-0.
They were 8-0.
They're 8-1 right now.
Okay, 8-0. I did not see that coming. So, props to Michigan State. Kenneth Walker has emerged as definitely a Heisman candidate, if not the front runner. He'll definitely be in New York, but that's all I really got to say.
This was Michigan State. Honestly, I would say both Michigan teams, more Spartans, obviously, but I would say, honestly, both Michigan teams have been big-time surprises this year. I mean, everyone expected the Wolverines to be not great either, and they came out of nowhere. And obviously, I think the bigger surprise is obviously the Spartans. This team was pitiful last year. This is Mel Tucker's second year. Everyone thought it'd take some time before they actually started having some great seasons, and all of a sudden this year, Kenneth Walker comes out of nowhere, putting up career numbers. I assume career numbers for him, and being a Heisman candidate. I mean, he's been unbelievable for Michigan State, and the defense has been. But I mean, it's been the Kenneth Walker show for the Spartans. That's really what has been basically leading them to every single win this season, and it has worked. They have been incredible, and they have a decent passing game too. I mean, Peyton Thorne with their two good receivers. I'm sure Calvin could name them. I can't name them off the top of my head.
Jalen Naylor and Jaden Reed.
Yes, those two. Yes, those two receivers can play for Michigan State. But yeah, they have been an outstanding team. Very surprising to see them go undefeated for 8 straight weeks. I mean, not as much them being us, because that happens almost all the time. But but definitely surprised to see them win for go undefeated 8 weeks straight until finally losing to Purdue last weekend.
Yep, and then we'll talk about the two Big 12 teams that have been the surprises, Baylor and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State obviously did get the head-to-head win over them, but both of them have been good, especially after Oklahoma State started terribly with the Missouri State scare at home. I think they were at home. I don't think they went to Missouri State. If they did, Oklahoma State fans, sorry. And then Baylor obviously was looking really, really good. Not as we thought it would. Same thing with Michigan State. Thought it would take a little bit to turn around, but back up to competitiveness. I don't know how much I can continue to trust Oklahoma State and Baylor, but they definitely exceeded expectations.
Well, for Oklahoma State, I love Oklahoma State. I'm a Cowboys fan. I like to see I like to see Oklahoma State succeed, because this team always gets hate. No one ever gives this team enough credit. No one ever gives Mike Gundy enough credit. He's a good head coach. His teams always do well. You never really see this. You always see this team at least in the bowl game, and a lot of the times they end up in the top 25. I think this team almost always exceeds expectations, and this year they're doing really well. And the quarterback, and I love their quarterback, Spencer Sanders, absolute player.
That's where we differ. That's where we differ. I've just seen so much Spencer Sanders choking and his defense bailing him out this year. I've just seen so much Spencer Sanders bail out that it's hard for me to... It depends, because you can get a really good Spencer Sanders, or you can get a really, really bad Spencer Sanders.
But Spencer Sanders, in my opinion, he has a serious amount of talent. And, I'm not going to deny that he has some games where he doesn't look consistent enough, but, that's going to come with experience. He's a junior right now. He can still stick around for another season, but he has uber amounts of talent, and I've seen it in different times I've watched him play with Oklahoma State. But, of course, Many people have heard me say this about the Big 12, but there are 3 teams, I'm going to say it again, 3 teams in the Big 12 that actually attempt to play defense, and that is Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Iowa State. Conveniently, 2 of them are the big surprises this year. But these 3 teams, they tend to be on the top of the Big 12 defensively. I don't know what their I'll look at what their stats are in the Big 12 this year, but Oklahoma State has been very surprising. Great season for the Cowboys, and right now it looks like if they get a win this weekend and Oklahoma beats Baylor, might be securing their position in the Big 12 for the national not national championship, sorry, the Big 12 championship game, assuming Iowa State loses too, because Iowa State has a head-to-head. You're talking about Baylor. Baylor's been really good too, and I don't know anything about Baylor's team. I can't say anything about the Bears. I don't know who in the world they have, but they've been playing very well. And I mean, they just lost to TCU, which is not a good loss, but I mean, 7-2, having a solid year. Baylor, very good so far. Very impressed by the Bears.
And we'll move on to the ACC. The only team in the ACC that I've seen is consistent, aside from probably NC State, Wake Forest, Sam Hartman and gang. We're 8. No, they were 8. The same thing, maybe, I don't remember. They were really high undefeated. I think they're 8 now. And then finally lost a close one in Chapel Hill. But, I mean, Sam Hartman and crew has been looking good, and they definitely are the favorites to win the ACC right now. So, I mean, we kind of knew Wake Forest would be good, but we didn't know it would be this good. So.
I don't know much about Wake Forest really either, but I started watching them. I saw they started winning a lot. I'm like, okay, having a good start to the year, and they kept scoring. They seem to have a really, really good offense, and it has been winning them almost every game until last week when they got outscored by North Carolina with their bipolar team. But the Tar Heels, the Demon Deacons have been very good this year. I'm very excited actually to see how they play against NC State this coming week, which will probably be the game for the ACC Atlantic, assuming Clemson doesn't somehow throw itself back into the lead again. So I think that's going to be a really good game between Wake and NC State, which NC State has been pretty solid this year too. Not going to lie, they've been above what I expected them to be. But Wake Forest, very, very good season, historical season for Wake Forest. Very impressed by the Demon Deacons this year.
Yeah, and then I'll soft mention, because I don't really know too much about the team, but I just like rooting for them, the UTSA Roadrunners, who have been and the UTEP Miners, who have kind of been in the bottom 130 for the while. But hey, they're 9-0. They're looking great. Congrats to UTSA. And then we will finish it off with 2 Big Ten teams for 2 different reasons. Purdue, they're usually good for an upset. They have 2 already. That's just what they. Yeah, I knew they were going to be a decent team, but not beat number 3 and number 5. Or no, they were number 2 at the time. Number 3 and number 2, and then Wisconsin. We didn't know what to expect from Wisconsin going into the season. Then Wisconsin stunk early on, but the surprise is the fact that they were really, really bad early on and came back. And now they're looking like they're going to go to the Big Ten Championship again, and we're going to get a repeat of Ohio State-Wisconsin yet again.
Well, the Big Ten West is really anybody's game right now, because you got the top 4 teams here with Wisconsin, Minnesota, Purdue, and Iowa, all at 2 losses in the Big Ten West. Now, Wisconsin does have wins over both Purdue and Iowa, and they have yet still to play Minnesota, which could end up being the game for the Big Ten West, that game in Minneapolis, and that should be a lot of fun. But yeah, for Purdue, I mean, they're supposed to have at least an okay year. No Rondale Moore, so I'm sure that would be no Rondale Moore for Purdue, so that definitely was not going to help them. But then David Bell, I forgot he was still around. He's a really good wide receiver. But you've seen Purdue take down the Hawkeyes in Iowa City. That isn't something that pretty much anyone's able to do. And then they take down the undefeated Michigan State Spartans. Yeah, they take on a second undefeated team, the Michigan State Spartans, at home, in where their quarterback has a career game. And now they have Ohio State in the horseshoe. Look out, Buckeyes. This team is hot. Purdue's got a very, very good team. I'm very impressed by the Boilermakers. They have an outstanding offense. Their defense is average at most. It is at least serviceable. But Purdue has an outstanding passing attack. And it showed again. I mean, Michigan State's secondary is pathetic, but it showed against the Spartans what they can do and how they can exploit a porous secondary, which Ohio State doesn't really have the greatest defense in the world. Let's be honest. So could be a high scoring game. I expect that game to be very high scoring between Buckeyes and Boilermakers.
Yeah,
but yeah, good season for Purdue and Wisconsin. I'll quick go through the Badgers. 1-3 to start off the year. It just a horrible start. Got swamped by Michigan. Got swamped by Notre Dame. They lost to Penn State as well. Close game against Penn State. And everyone's like, "Yeah, this team is bad. They're gonna suck." And then they rattle off 5 wins in a row. That came out of nowhere. Graham Mertz was horrible to start off the year, and he's completely turned it around now. So I'm impressed that Wisconsin was just at least able to turn their season around and get it to where it is now. They might win the Big Ten West again. Like I said, who really knows with it being a 4-way tie. But definitely impressed by the Badgers to at least be able to get themselves to where they are now.
Mm-hmm. And that's going to do it for the midseason review of college football. Thank you all so much for watching. That's Mitch. I'm Jacob. Have a great night. Peace.